It's kind of a sad time out in the woods right now. Jen and I were out here just a couple days ago, and we found McFly. McFly was a buck that, you know, I have to say, if he came by me, I might have had a hard time not shooting him. He's got that beautiful kicker, drop tine, some would call it off the back of the antlers. We even got him confused with Bo at times. We found him out here in the woods. We were coming down the trail right there. Joel and I had been up here. We were cutting. We were coming up this way, and we didn't look back at it. But coming down the trail right there, Jen and I both spotted it. She spotted it a little bit before I did, and really sickening. And we named these bucks. And I'm not saying obviously you get to know these bucks like a dog or something, but what you do get to do is know them within a group or camaraderie of the group, neighborhood, and that's really important. We name our bucks. I've even seen people online that make fun of people naming their bucks. Even scientists refer to them as numbers, M100, M106. I remember John Azoga up in Munising, he studied deer for for 30 years, an entire career with the state of Michigan. And that's all he did. And he studied deer, and he really liked these deer, and all those deer in the Camp Cousineau enclosure that they had were numbered and named by number, basically. Well, you can imagine when you have a bunch of people looking at these bucks, the big 8-point, the big 10-point, the wide 10, the wide 8, the heavy 8, the heavy 10, whatever you call them, those get run out pretty quick. We name them because we are hunting specific target bucks. This is McFly, and we were hoping he'd make it to at least 5.5 years old. He was 4.5. I passed him up last year when he was 3.5. This season I didn't get to see him. And so it's really unfortunate to see here. We saw him a lot in through November, December, healthy buck moving by. And then all of a sudden, early January, he was limping. The last video we got of him was January 17th. He was limping his back right rear. He was holding up, and last video we got of him was right up here at our what we call the Hermit Waterhole, and that's only 70-80 yards away at the most. And so he died right here. In fact, there's a hide right above the side-by-side up here, big patch of hair. We really think it's important to name these deer. Like I said, we're going after specific target bucks. When people don't name their bucks, you don't have to name them, it doesn't really matter to me, but a lot of times folks that go out, say, on public land, and they don't really have that connection with the land or a certain spot, they might just hunt here or there, they don't have a certain buck that they're after. We actually, because we're watching some of these bucks, for this one, if we shot him next year, we would have had a 3-year history with, as far as when we first passed him up. And you even see right down here on this tine, when I passed him up 2 seasons ago, he had just a little stub of a point coming out. I don't even know if it was an inch long. And that's one of the ways we were able to identify him this year. We also share these bucks with other hunters. Now, it's not just the hunting group we have. You know, Dylan here is a videography. He sits with me in the stands too. And we just like to name these bucks. So when I refer to McFly, which, was that your name or Jen's name?
I think that was Jen. So
Jen and Dylan come up with all the cool names. I'm a dud at that, I guess. But we had another one. Jen just found the one side of shed of LL Beams, and that was a Dylan name, LL Beams. But we have to refer to these bucks. Dante hunts here, Mike hunts here, sometimes my daughter Autumn, Jake and Sam are around too. And then it's not just our own hunting group though, it's our neighborhood. So one of the first calls I made with this, to let know, I sent Dante, I sent Dylan and Mike, I sent those texts out right away with pictures of the buck. But then I also called Chad, one of our neighbors from Weiss Realty. He's right here locally, and a lot of these bucks we share back and forth. And so it's pretty cool to see some of the bucks we share. McFly was not one that we shared very often. He wasn't over here. We have an overlapping herd of maybe 15-20%, or we see LL Beams a lot. For example, Chad sees LL Beams a lot. We see LL Beams at different times of the year than Chad does. We see him the same time of year. He'll go from one property to the next, even a day apart. It's pretty interesting. So there's bucks like that. There's bucks that Chad never sees. There's bucks that are on chads that I never see, and chad's only a half mile away. So it's pretty crazy how when you get these older bucks, they can become very, very specific in their home range. That teaches you a lot about mature buck behavior and mature buck patterns that can help you actually apply for hunting later in the year and for other different seasons. So it's really critical to understand the relationship. But again, whether it's Chad, our neighbor, Jeremy's between Chad and I, all the people that hunt here, it's really critical to name these bucks something you can actually remember, because we had 7 bucks that made it through the season we thought would be 5 years old or older this year. McFly is one of them, so we can check him off the list. We're down to 6 now. We had Shorty and Isaac that were limping at some point, and Shorty had a stiff neck, kind of crooked, and then Isaac was limping too, but we haven't seen those bucks since mid-November. We're not counting those as one of the 6, so we're worried about those. 6 made it through the season, but just because they made it through the season doesn't mean they're going to be around. There's a lot of strategy for naming these bucks. It can teach you a lot about bucks. Plus, you tend to draw a connection with these bucks you actually name, and what I find is you really get to know them more on an individual level. And it's crazy, we don't name these bucks until we've had a chance to observe them for a while when they're 2-3 years old. Bo is a perfect 10-point, for example, so that was a fitting name for him. LL Beams, the first time we saw him was 3 seasons ago when Tyler, our hunt winner, was hunting out here. Well, I'd say 4 seasons ago, wasn't it? Yeah, that was, in fact, we named him, we had Brandon at that time, and Brandon, we had Brandon and Barry. So Brandon turned into LL Beams. He all of a sudden was a different looking buck, and so it was pretty cool to see him progress. But we get to know these bucks, like I said, for quite a few years, which is so different than just hunting borrowed property over here, hunting an occasional public land piece where you really don't know to get the animals. And it's a lot different when you're actually targeting specific bucks. We're getting pictures of them, we're sharing those pictures with neighborhood and family and friends, and then we're also targeting those bucks on an individual personal level as we get to know those bucks. I apologize for cutting in the video. I'll try to keep this 20 seconds or less. But we're thinking about planting, and so is Lincoln at Packer Max. And right now he doesn't offer very many deals. It's $50 off. Check out the code WHS50. It's in the link in the description. Try them. Great product. Check it out. You won't be sorry throughout the season. And you can imagine, again, going to these names of the wide 10, the big 10, the big 8, the heavy buck, the heavy this, heavy that, narrow buck. Those names get really confusing very fast. So naming these bucks is a big part of our strategy, whether it's buck behavior and patterning those bucks for the future, or just plain being able to share them with friends and family and friends in the neighborhood that you want to keep tabs on with these deer, and just contributing to the enjoyment of the hunt. Well, I can say with McFly, I have a text into our local CO, and I haven't heard back from them, so it's at that stage where I'll actually call a Minnesota DNR and just see what process I have to go through to get these antlers and head back at the house where we can, you know, maybe make a European mount, put him on the wall and enjoy him. He's a beautiful buck. He's just one of those, obviously we're hoping any buck makes it, but he was one of the special ones that had some unique character that we were really hoping would make it through next season. And you know, you find stuff like this. We find them on client properties. This is probably, I believe this is the biggest one we found on our own property, even going back to 2002 and my first parcel I purchased in '95. But we have a lot of history with some of these bucks. I can generally say that when they make it through the season, they make it to a very high rate. So to see one like this that we know made it through the season by 2 or 3 weeks and then have this happen is, again, really unfortunate. And it almost makes it a little more sad when you actually have a name that you've been calling them for months at a time or years at a time too. So anyways, I hope you can appreciate why we name bucks, and also our connection to these bucks, and why, you know, really like knowing what happened to them and being able to find them out here in the woods. But very, very sad at the same time.